All right, everybody out there in YouTube land, I'm your host once again, Dan Thornton, and I want to wish you all a good morning. Here we are, Lions Talk Live, coming at you and trying to find some information maybe you're not getting everywhere else. It's easy for me to come out here and just spit out the articles that other people have written or all that kind of stuff. But like with yesterday's video, I want to try to do a little bit more of a dive, try to give you guys some other food to digest on your morning drives or whatever it may be to work. So with that being said, I wanted to talk a little bit today. Well, I mean, we'll get into a little bit of tidbits of what happened yesterday with the Lions, et cetera, et cetera. I want to talk about the Brad Holmes turnaround. Make that the focal point of today's video for you guys. And I think we can all agree the Lions have turned things around. They're not the same old Lions anymore. They are the brand new Lions, whatever kind of moniker you want to give them. But before we get into all that, I'm sure you guys know I got bills to pay and all that kind of stuff. So if you haven't yet subscribed to Lions Talk Live, I got to ask you, why haven't you? So please consider doing so. I think we're about, 15, 20 people away from hitting the 3,400 mark. And I really wouldn't mind trying to hit 3,500 subscribers before Sunday's kickoff. If you can, help make that happen. Also, go ahead and hit the like button. You guys know all the gist when it comes to that. Also, if you're considering buying or selling property anywhere in the state of Michigan, Upper Peninsula, regular Michigan, whatever you want to call it, I'm here for you. Over 30 years of experience. I can come out and try to help you either figure out how to save money on your listing or save money on the purchase of a home. So if you get a free minute, you want to just have a conversation with me, what I can do to help you, please give me a call at 269-998-2384. All right, let's get into the meat of today's stuff. So I'm sure, as you all know, a few years back, Bob Quinn and that regime, things didn't go well. I get the Lions had a great idea on trying to turn things around. Good morning, Bergs. Good morning to you. Trying to turn things around, get things moving in a positive direction for the Lions. Just when Jim Caldwell was let go, the idea was they were going to take the team to another level. I get it. But I'm sure we're all going to understand that ain't go so hot. So when Brad Holmes came in, what did he really have to work with? Same with Dan Campbell. But I would say we could all probably agree there wasn't a whole lot on the team as far as talent. There wasn't a whole lot of things to look positive about. So what Brad Holmes did do is he did have a conversation. We all know I'm revising history here and revisiting history, I should say, and talked to Matthew Stafford, an aging and unfortunately beat up quarterback, that he said, hey, your future here is probably at an end. We need to try to consider you going somewhere else to help your career. And something let's give them credit, because that had not been the Lions' history prior to that. The Lions had a long history of, either Barry Sanders or Calvin Johnson or other greats. We draft you, we're going to keep you, we're not going to trade you. But that kind of changed with Brad Holmes. He sent Matthew Stafford, as we all know, to the Rams. And what did we get in return? Let's think about it. We got Iffy, so, starting corner / safety. We got, I'm trying to remember everybody now offhand. We did get Laporta. We got Jameson Williams, Gibbs, and, other players as well. But I think those are probably the big crux of it all, who we've received over the years in compensation. All right, first time, long time. Hey, Terry Hill, welcome to the show. Johnny Mack, good morning. I've been hearing some good counterbalance in the negative some are saying about Gibbs. The way we're using him and heavy carries have affected other high draft picks. Johnny, I think you're spot on to get off the storyline for this morning's show. I think you're 100% right. If you're going to have a running back and one that's going to last for a while, kind of the days of giving them 30 carries a game, 25 carries, or more, probably in the past. And the way Gibbs is built, I don't think it'd be ideal for him. I do think you're going to see his evolution over the course of this season, and then obviously next season too, in the foreseeable future. I think you're going to see more and more of, I'm trying to remember the kid from San Francisco, the wide receiver who also plays running back. If you guys know his name, throw it in the comment section. I'm just drawing a blank right now, but we did that a little bit with St. Brown his rookie year, where if you guys remember, as the season went on, he went from just playing receiver to being in the backfield. And I really think that's probably going to be Gibbs' future. The current leadership has a real plan, and it's really coming together. So fun, and I agree that the moves and, of course, of the results. All right, Ekron, good morning. Good morning. Beautiful day it is. If you're a Lions fan, I think we're going to have a lot of beautiful mornings today, or throughout the season, I should say. So, getting back to the Brad Holmes turnaround real quick, uh, I'm going to say this. Can you think of another GM in Detroit sports history that has overseen such a meaningful turnaround? I'm not saying there isn't, but how often can he come up with them? You could probably say Trader Jack with the Detroit Pistons in the 80s, took a franchise that was just, left for dead and turned them obviously into the bad boys and helped establish a building block for even the second rendition of the Bad Boys. But Brad Holmes, we know about the Stafford trade, but let's also consider this with a trade. Let's just go back to this year's draft. Think about this. And I get we could have drafted Carter or other persons at number 6, but he took the Rams draft pick just from this year and turned it around into the following, turned it into Gibbs, turned it into Laporta, laid the foundation for also you could get Brian Branch. So without that single move, yes, we could have had one person, Carter. Nothing wrong with Carter. He's going to have a great NFL career. But think about that. Brad Holmes had the ability to play chess, to be the evil genius, like I had in the thumbnail. And by the way, I had a little fun making that. To get 3 players that appear to be impactful players, and not just for one season, but for many seasons to come. And that's where I think his real genius lies. He's constantly manipulating the draft board, manipulating free agency, talking to other teams, trying to set up future moves. And we'll talk about that here in a second. Good morning, brother. Good morning to you, Crypto. What else we got here? We got Debo Samuel. Thank you, JT, for that. Yeah, the Lions used St. Brown his rookie year a lot like Debo Samuel, and I really do think in the future we're going to see more of that from Gibbs. But talking about Brad Holmes, right now, as you guys know, if you watch Lions Talk Live for a while, I've been reporting a lot about, hey, I've got good information that the Lions have made phone calls to these teams. They've inquired about, this wide receiver, this defensive back, whatever it is. But from the preseason to now, that hasn't stopped. And a lot of people, I get the way we're conditioned. We all want, things now. We want something to happen now. We want that, get that breaking news, to get that adrenaline, just powering through us. Whatever it is, that's how we are as a society nowadays. But Brad Holmes is out here playing chess. Yes, I think in the preseason, he legitimately probably did call about some wide receivers. I mean, you guys and we've talked about it, that the Lions knew going into the season with Jameson Williams sidelined for a while, that they probably had some depth concerns, I guess you could say, at the second receiver spots, the second and third. It's not that, Reynolds isn't good or Khalif Raymond isn't good. It's just they're not that number 1 or 2 receiver. They're much more of a Robin to a Batman. And for all the strengths of St. Brown, I think he's at his best when he's Robin and not Batman. And hopefully you guys get my analyses there. But so, yes, I do think he called about Mike Evans and other guys. And even now, as you guys are aware, he's calling around to lay the seeds of a foundation for the future. I do believe before the trade deadline, especially if we, get wins this weekend against Tampa Bay and, other teams, the closer we get to that trade deadline where, hey, we can say we're here in the NFC North, other people are below us. In the NFC overall, we're one of the better teams. We're in the, say, top, 4 or 5 or something. So really, I think if we can ask ourselves, do we all believe, raise your hand or whatever, do you believe San Francisco is the number 1 team in the NFC? And from that point on, and just my opinion, you guys let me know yours, it sounds like most would say number 2 through and number 10 really aren't that different. It's going to be a player or two, just a thing or two here that's going to separate the teams. All right. What do we got here in the comment section? Do you think Brad will actually make a move before the trade deadline? I do. And the more and more I talk to some friends around Detroit that obviously would have meaningful knowledge, I do. I think and that's what I'm talking about right now. He's setting some things up, sort of like with the NFL draft. Everybody plays their cards close to their chest. Hey, we're talking to this guy, man, he really looks good. I hope he follows to us or whatever. They're all trying to do that to position other teams to jump on players maybe they themselves don't want. So the actual player that you do want falls to you. Hopefully that makes sense. Carl, is Branch playing Sunday? I know Kirby, Joseph, and Mosley are ready. I would say my belief is yes. I get St. Brown and Branch are hurting. I do believe that St. Brown's, I know yesterday he went through maybe like 75% speed practice. Still a little limited, but still, I mean, you got a couple more days. Just the way he is mentally, the way he likes to fight through things. I also think the team doesn't want to mess around with potentially dropping any games. I'd put it this way: get him through the first half. You got a big lead. You can give him some rest the second half. The same with Brian Branch, unless he's just really unable to cut, because really at his position, he's going to have to cut first and foremost. With a bum ankle running a straight line is going to be less impactful. But cutting left and right and doing that proficiently, that's going to be more the struggle. I believe they'll both play, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Hey, good morning, Jay Mommy. Do you think that they might package Hooker and some others, or excuse me, someone else for future draft picks? That's Jay Mommy. That's a good question. There are a lot of teams that are going to be looking for future quarterback help, and I do believe across the NFL, most GMs, coaches, whoever you want to ask, if Hendon Hooker wasn't injured, would he have been a first or second round pick? I think the answer is yes. And probably my guess, he would have went in the latter part of the first round. Who knows though? A team that's needy, maybe he would have went sooner, but I think he would have went somewhere between 25 and maybe number 5 of the second round. So they're given that kind of window. And I do believe Brad Holmes is aware of that. He seems to be the type of person who's always looking for value. And if you guys have watched this channel, which I get a lot of you guys have, don't forget to hit that like button. He's constantly, like I was saying, working things for future results. This entire preseason and now in the season, he's calling and making conversations with teams to try to set up future moves. And I think what you bring up about Hendon Hooker, I think that's no different. I think he is talking to some teams. Right now, you can look across the NFL. Who are some teams that are already, like it or not, if you're in the fan base, starting to think about their future versus now? And we get 2-3 more weeks into this, and your team's, 0 for whatever, 1 in something. I guess maybe at 2-5 or whatever, maybe you still have some thoughts about the playoffs. I mean, be honest, look what happened with us last year. But is that going to be the norm? Probably not. And I do believe there will be some teams that may potentially call for him, especially if the Lions put him on the active roster. All right, Crypto, what do you got? What position do you think we need more depth at? I would say this: defensive line, offensive line, wide receiver. And probably if I was going to prioritize, it'd probably be, hate saying it. It'd probably be offensive line, defensive line, and wide receiver. Probably that order. Good question. And that's assuming no other injuries happen that really displace anybody. I mean, Mosley coming back really makes that secondary pretty deep. With Branch and Kirby coming back, CJ's probably going to be back. I'm going to guess middle of December, maybe if he's real lucky, early December. But then that secondary, that's got some depth to it. All right, Max, what do we got here? We will sign Mosley, Garner, or the other DBs that are on one-year contract. I think it all comes down to how they finish out the season. I could definitely see Gardner, I hate saying it, but I could definitely see Gardner with Branch's elevation. You have to make a choice. You're going to re-sign CJ, or you're going to probably cut Tracy Walker. And I guess Brad Holmes, you have to decide that. I know where I would go, re-sign CJ, but it's not up to me. If I was to compare CJ to Tracy Walker, you guys probably heard me say this before. CJ is the guy that makes plays. He's there on time. He gets it done. He gets the fumble. He gets the pick, whatever it is. Walker is the guy that gets there and nearly gets the pick, nearly gets the fumble. I mean, you're splitting half-second differences, but CJ at this point in his career makes that half-second move. Walker is in his career in Detroit, at least my view, He's always a half second late, and I think that's the problem. All right, does Teddy B have value to the Jets? I thought he did the second Aaron Rodgers went down, but I would also say this: the fact that it hasn't happened yet. If I'm the Jets, I mean, you can't afford to keep wasting wins and still have a need for Teddy Bridgewater. If I'm them, I'm probably on that phone pretty quick here and get somebody, whether it's Kirk Cousins or whoever. And the Lions, yes, they could move somebody else up into the backup role, whether that's Hooker or whoever. Great question there, Terry. All right, Don Burr. Sit Decker and Branch, we need them versus Bucks. I agree. If they're not 100%, it might be the time to do it. The other way, I guess I would look at it, Don, is hey, don't mess around with Carolina. You want to use them to get a lead, get up 20 points or something, and then slide them out of the lineups, let them rest. I don't know. It's tough, and it's going to come down to how they perform. But obviously, the medical teams are going to look at Decker because of his importance and the type of injury he has. I get both of them have ankle injuries, but they're going to say, hey, if he's not going to further aggravate this thing by not being out there, unless it's just a brand new injury, go ahead and let him go. But to your point, letting him rest, get it even healthier, him and Branch, it's not a bad idea either. I guess what I would say is I don't think there's a wrong way to do it in either situation, but we'll see. Jay Mommy, I agree with the Lions. All right, thank you. All right, Bergs, defensive line, I'd say, yeah, I could see them. I like our line. I think I think we all agree it's doing pretty well. But if you could put one more playmaker out there, a dominant player next to Hutch, I mean, I will say this: I think Hutchinson is a dominant player. Houston returns is a dominant pass rusher. He's just not dominant stopping the run game. And I think we all get this coaching staff, this regime has put a priority on running the ball and stopping the run. So if you look at how their choices on the defensive front for who they're playing, and sometimes we wonder why isn't this guy playing? It's because the players they have out there are run stop first players, and some of them can get to the quarterback. Harris, even though I'm not a fan of playing him over Houston, he does stop the run a whole lot better than Houston does, while Houston gets to that quarterback a mammoth amount better than Harris. And nothing against Charles Harris. It's my evaluation. All right, Burrs. Also need depth on a wide receiver. Yeah, and I think that's where the Lions could really get, better as a team. And again, going back to the start of this conversation, 49ers, I think, are the class of the NFC. We all get that. But from number 2 to number 10, is there really a huge difference? You probably have to say Seattle should be ranked higher than Detroit just because they beat us, albeit in overtime, yada, yada, a bunch of other stuff. But still, is there a huge difference between these two teams? Is there really a big difference between Dallas and Detroit? Is there a big difference between Philadelphia this year? I haven't been overly impressed with Philadelphia. Nothing against them. I just don't think they're the same team as far as results or intimidation as they were a year ago. Something changed. Jerry Jeudy, that might be a possibility. I'm trying to think who would be available on a team that's going to be selling. And the Bucks, you can take Mike Evans off the board. They're going for the playoffs unless something really changes. So they're going to ride that out. They're not going to do anything to jeopardize that. But there will be some teams. I know there's been some talk about Arizona, getting rid of a couple of people, and they do have some quote unquote Jameson Williams types, some speed burners. And there'll be other teams to mention too. But I think you guys get the gist. The Lions are going to set up, and Brad Holmes, to the point of the thumbnail, is doing a real good job of keeping lines of communication going with multiple different teams on multiple different positions to try to keep that ready. So when the Team A is going to decide to sell parts, there's no other buyers. Well, I know we talked about a 4th-round pick, but I really think the best I can do is a 6th-round pick at this point. And I think he's already establishing some communication about value or perceived value for certain players at different positions. And now, like a good salesperson, we can try to whittle that down. And that's where I think we've got a real opportunity to get some players, lower end draft picks, but add some real depth and firepower to this team on both sides of the ball. With our bills coming due next year, can we afford Max Crosby? You know, I would say this, Crypto. I think we could. You think about so if you look at the top 10 players on the Lions who are getting paid, you got Romeo, you got Tracy Walker up there. I mean, you got a lot of guys that are, I hate to say it, but probably expendable. So you could cut some money real quick by getting rid of some of your depth that you don't foresee being around. With Crosby, I would say this: you get rid of Harris and Romeo, you could add Crosby and probably even save some money. So are you willing to get rid of those two to add him? And if I'm Brad Holmes and I'm trying to make a legitimate push for the Super Bowl, I probably say yeah. And it's nothing against Romeo. It's nothing against Charles Harris. But do I think Max Crosby, to your point, Crypto, is better than both of them? Yes, I do. Are you be willing to get rid of a little bit of depth to add him? And my answer is probably yes. It's just going to come down to, I guess, what's it going to cost to bring him in? And you guys let me know your thoughts. What do you think it would cost to bring in Max Crosby? Because the Raiders have a real good chance. Sorry for reading Don Burr's comment here. I think the Lions would have a real good chance to acquire somebody like that. My favorite cereal, Mountain Dew. Just being honest, man. That's my morning thing. I don't really eat in the morning. I have a Mountain Dew. I'm ready to go for work. So, all right. So I know we kind of got off base here a little bit with what I was talking about. Oops. There we go. Brad Holmes ready to go. So Brad Holmes, as we know, and we've been talking about, he's positioning, he's making all these calls. So what do you guys think? What would be your top 3 positions of need for the Lions? And you've heard mine, offensive line, defensive line, wide receiver. Is there something else I'm missing here? I think running back's good. Depth at quarterback right now is good unless we do trade Teddy Bridgewater, which again, if we haven't done it by now with the Jets or somebody like that, I'm guessing it's probably not happening unless some other team has their starting quarterback go down and they foresee that person gone for a significant amount of time. Then maybe Bridgewater or somebody else in the league's backup quarterback has more value. But that would be my guess. Receiver, yeah, I think we could add some more firepower there. Tight end, I just don't see that one happening. Maybe I'm wrong. Linebacker, I think we're good. Secondary, like we talked about. I mean, CJ comes back. Branch gets healthy. Mosley's back. I mean, I think you're pretty deep there. But I guess if there's somebody out there that's just burning the kid in here to Detroit, then let me know. Any news on Hooker on the 53? I think he's close. The only question is going to be, who do they want to carry 3 quarterbacks? And I don't think that's going to happen. So I think Hooker is going to be relegated this season. Bridgewater's gone after this season, and that's when I think Hendon Hooker gets really moved up. All right, Crypto, what you got for me, man? I'm hearing Crosby will cost the first, third, fourth, and $7 million. Dead cap, 19 million, 21 million. Well, let me ask you this, Crypto, and everybody in the video in the chat. Do you see Brad Holmes departing with that type of draft capital? And that's where I think Crosby is probably going to be on the wrong side of our scoreboard. It's just Brad Holmes seems like he's a value shopper. He's going to shop at 5 and below if he can versus going anywhere else. It's just I think he's looking to add parts for 4th rounders, 5th rounders. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll pull the trigger on some huge move. Adding Crosby, I think, does take our team on the defensive side to another level. Is he going to be willing to get rid of that? The only way I see him getting rid of a first if he's getting something like Crosby and a second or a multiple thirds or something like that. Because ammunition that he could use if he needed to move back up into the first round. Because look at the bulk of his draft this year. And just using this draft as the example, we had the 2 firsts. Yes, we still ended up with 2 firsts, but he was constantly trying to move around on the board to get other positions. I did hear, and I can't say this is true or not, but I did hear when we got to pick 18, Holmes did talk to some teams about trading back from there to pick up an additional, I think, I'm going off memory, so don't hold me to it, a second and like a couple fourths or something like that. That trade obviously didn't happen. We did go with Campbell. And I will say this, the more we're seeing Campbell as an outside rusher, the more I think this guy's going to have huge value this season and in the future. All right, Crypto, what do you got? I don't think Brad will give up the picks either. He's built through the draft and may stick with his guns. Yeah, even though he comes for the Rams, I mean, he did not come here using a Rams draft scenario of just getting rid of the picks, get good players. Now, my question, though, is while he's done a heck of a job rebuilding the team, and let's be honest, I think when he came in, this regime, raise your hands in the comment section below, how many of you thought it would take 3 to 4 years to really turn the team around? And consider this, the first year I get complete turnaround, but you get halfway through last season, the teams turn around. We nearly make the playoffs. So he did this turnaround in earnest in basically 18 months. And I don't think anybody, even the most optimistic Lions fans, when he was hired along with Campbell and they started, trading Stafford and everything else, I don't think any of us really saw a turnaround that fast. But give him credit because it's due. He got us turned around just that quick. All right, Donnie Bird, what you got? No, Brad Holmes is not giving up all the draft capital, especially not this year. I would agree. Max, I don't think we should trade Hooker. I'm not laughing at you, Max. I'm laughing at this. Somebody raised their hands in the comment section below. So, Max, yeah, I agree. I think the Lions, the reason why they took him is they wanted some insurance. This is my opinion for Goff. Goff has another good year this year, which it looks like he's going to. I think they're probably going to be looking to resign him. But if he doesn't, if something happens where he just falls apart, is Hooker the answer? I will also say this. I think Hooker is going to do well enough in practices where they almost have like the Green Bay philosophy. They're going to keep him developing for 2 to 3 years, and then they might be at that point in a position where they say, hey, Goff and Hooker are about the same. One is significantly cheaper than the other, but we'll see what happens. I mean, Goff, I think at this point it's going to take a whole lot to displace him. I mean, he's just playing at a dang good level. And you guys have already heard Brad Holmes say it's a whole lot easier to get worse at that position than it is to get better. I'm going to put that up there again, though, Arshan. All right. Hooker won't be traded. Yeah, I agree. It would take a lot, I think, to get him out of Detroit. All right, Terry, I agree. Max Teddy is expendable after this season. Yep, I would say that. Yeah, he's probably only here on a 1-year rental. Arshan, Goff is going to get his extension. He has more than earned it. I agree, and that will come down to be the question: what does Holmes pay Goff? Well, let's be honest. The Goff's current deal, which just a couple years ago, everybody was like, "This is breaking the bank." Well, now that thing looks pretty dang cheap, and a lot of quarterbacks in his tier are getting almost twice what he's getting. So, yeah, it will be interesting to see what Goff ends up commanding if they do extend him. But my guess is you're probably looking at least in the 40s, right? $40 million a year. But does Goff say, hey, I don't want to go through another Rams situation. Do I give him a hometown discount? That's something up to him. At some point, I mean, I don't know. I'm not getting $40 million a year, so I can't say we're $50 million a year. But I would say this: at some point, man, you should be able to sneak by on 30, 35, or whatever it is a year. All right, what do we got here, Max? We need to start upgrading the practice squad. That's a good place to be. Yeah. The problem is you got to be able to find players that are upgrades. But I got to imagine that this regime, and this would include the coaching staff, they're looking around constantly trying to find value somewhere. I mean, like any NFL team. They've got, so most of you guys know I do scouting for overseas markets for athletes and such. I know most NFL teams have 8 to 12 scouts that are constantly looking. They're looking at, Canada or wherever it may be to try to find value somewhere. They get tons of tapes, or I guess nowadays it would be like online videos, not CDs or tapes. But you get the idea. They're constantly getting sent stuff from people who are trying to make it. UPS drivers that are workout warriors, they get lit up with stuff, and they're going to do everything they can to find somebody to put on that practice squad that they think they can develop into helping that roster. All right, John, everything always depends on the price tag. I agree, man. Holmes just doesn't seem like he'll be willing to break the bank for almost anything. I'd also agree with that. I'm interested to see what his first big spend will be. I'm going to guess the first big spend, and this is my guess, is going to be keeping some of these players. So Goff, Penei Sewell, St. Brown. I mean, you got a lot of players in the next couple of years that are going to come up and get paid. And I think that's where the Lions are going to, Jonah Jackson this offseason. They're going to have to make a choice with him. You're going to pay him big line money, and that's, Brad Holmes is going to have to make some tough calls here, because if you're not paying him with the Brad Holmes model, you're probably redrafting players to fit those spots. And not that that's bad, but you run the risk. That draft pick has to pan out to what that other player can be, or at least pretty similar. Archer, with all these blockbuster deals, I sense a cap increase might be coming soon. I would agree, but I would say that's also the norm for the NFL, especially, unlike every other franchise, or excuse me, league in the world. The NFL's salary cap goes up pretty steadily. So while the numbers keep going up for the players, there's also more money to spend almost every season. About to head off for morning Mountain Dew. Cheers. That's what I'm talking about. T-Chair, yeah. I'll go for a couple more minutes here. But yes, the Circle K is calling my name. All right, Sean, Max Crosby at 26 sure is tempting, though. But, man, does that contract jump starting next year? Don't think a deal happens without a contract restructure. Yeah, I guess, not having the books or anything in front of me, figuring how to play it out, it could be done bringing him in. I do believe you would have to manipulate the contract for the verbiage of, finding years to pay him more when the other players' salaries are less. There can be a lot of manipulating to do, but I think the big hiccup for going after someone like Crosby or somebody of that level is just going to be what you're going to have to give up to get them. And that doesn't seem to fit Brad Holmes' MO. Nani Burr, would I hard pass on Claypool? I put it this way, man. If everybody keeps dumping that player, you might want to ask yourself, why does everybody keep dumping that player? And I haven't, I don't watch the Bears games a ton. I just see them every now and then, or, Pittsburgh games. But other than his size and physical stuff, what does he do to jump out? And with the locker room that we have now, from as far as the mental component, who the types of personality traits they put in that locker room, does he fit that? And I would say, from what little I know, and I've never really done an analysis on him, but I would say probably not. He just doesn't seem to have that mental wherewithal or personality traits that I'm going to put that person in the locker room that seems incredibly sound at this point. All right, Bergs, we have a lot of in-house guys coming up for paydays. I would agree. And that's kind of what I was just saying. Starting next year, you're starting to have to pay out some money, and that's going to keep happening for the following years because you've drafted so well. The first year draft for Brad Holmes, I would say, is a solid B. Last year, an A. This year also appears to be an A. So you're going to want to retain a lot of those players you brought in. There haven't been a whole lot that haven't panned out. And it really would have to be his first year draft where you could really say there's 2 or 3 guys that, don't look like they're going to get second contracts. The rest of them, yeah, there's the vast majority of those players are going to be re-signed, I would assume, unless there's something that pops up that just keeps it from happening. Max, Goff hasn't get beat up. It will last a while in his career. Yeah, Goff hasn't really had too many big injuries. And not to come after Stafford or anything, and that's not the point of what I'm about to say, but in Stafford's situation, unfortunately, think back to his rookie year against Cleveland. Heck of a moment where he, blows out the shoulder, comes in, still throws the game-winning pass while throwing the shoulder out of socket again. But it's just he's put that body through a lot of damage. And to the point where now I know he's got a hip injury. And if you ever had a hip injury, there's no position where you're relaxing in. Because whether you're laying down on your side, sitting down, whatever, you're going to feel that hip. And I'll say this to you guys. He's at the point in his career, why keep doing it? I'm assuming he hasn't blown his money. Maybe his wife has. I don't know. He's won a Super Bowl. He's done just about anybody what you could want out of a career. Why keep punishing that spine, now a hip, your shoulders, your elbows? I mean, he does have to live the rest of his life. And I would say this to him, man, maybe it's time to just step away. To Max's point, though, Goff, though, he's had very few injuries. And in Detroit, he's not, outside of the Atlanta game, he's not getting hit much. So he should be, like you're saying, Max, he should be healthy for a long time to come. John, yeah, I scout overseas players mostly in China and the middle part of Europe, but I get sent over looking for athletes, do player evaluations, and more importantly, personality trait evaluations. I'm in Japan. If you ever need a translator, I'll consider that, man. Yeah, because I'm probably a little better with my Chinese than my Japanese, but thank you for that. Probably not many football players coming out over here, aside from the sumo champions playing in Colorado now. You'd be surprised where people get sent to look for players, and not just for NFL, but for NBA and etc. It's just the world has become aware. If you look over the entire planet instead of just one area, you're going to find a lot more possibilities. All right, Robert. Holmes draft picks are valuable. Let Brad cook. I agree. And that's why I don't think if we make a move for a trade or whatever, I think it's going to be for lower end round draft picks, not higher end ones, because I think he's aware it's a whole lot easier for me to take a first round pick and trade it down for a later first round pick, second or third round pick, etc., than it is to do the opposite. So I agree with you there. Don Burr, Aaron Glenn, named back in the head coaching jobs. You know how quickly things can change, and that's just part of the world of coaching. If you've never been a coach, here's an example I'll give you guys, and I learned it thankfully early in my early 20s. I was an assistant coach at a place called Western Michigan University, and the head coach, Bob Donewald. You know, Western Michigan is not a major Division I school. It's what you would call a lower end mid-major, a MAC school. So anyways, takes the team to this is for basketball, by the way, takes the team to the NCAA tournament. We pull off a first round upset, go to the second round. Western's the talk of the town, so to speak. That off season, Mr. Donewald, or Coach Donewald, is offered a 5-year contract from Minnesota. He turns it down to stay at Western Michigan University out of loyalty. They gave him a head coaching job. He's thankful, all that stuff. After that, next year, after they went to the NCAA tournament, won that big game, which for a school that size, that's kind of like winning the Super Bowl. So they go through that next season. The president of the university fires him, more or less, puts him in the front office. It's not like we had a bad season or anything, but he turned down 5 years pay raise at a bigger institution to show loyalty to a school. That school cans him. And that's the one thing I would say for Aaron Glenn. You get hot, you take that new contract. You take it and you run with it, because in the world of coaching, how quickly things can change. I'd say most or a lot of Lions fans after the game against Seattle wanted him gone. I mean, I'm not going to say 50%, but there was a good amount of people. You'll find a ton of YouTubers that were jumping on this guy saying, man, he's trash, everything else. But look what he's taken over from the first year. The second year, the defense was trash that first 5 or 6 games. But changes happen. Rookies got better. They got everybody on the same page. And the last 10 games of season 2 of Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell, that defense got pretty good. This year, they're looking real good. Doesn't mean they don't have holes. Doesn't mean they don't have deficiencies. But now everybody's like, Aaron Glenn's great. And that's the problem if you're going to be in the world of coaching, how quickly and fickle everybody can go. You can go from having new contracts offered to you to being ran out of town in seemingly the same season. So if Glenn or Ben Johnson or whoever on the staff gets a contract thrown at him, my advice to you is you take it, because you unfortunately, it's just the world of coaching. All right, Crypto, thanks for that. Yeah, smash that like button if you guys can. And if you haven't yet subscribed to Lions Talk Live, please consider doing so. All right, Archon, how much do you think our situation will change when Ben Johnson takes over a head coaching job? I'm going to say, I'll say this. It's going to change. And the hard part, let's use Philadelphia as a case study. Look at the changes, how both losing those coordinators have cost them. Does Philadelphia, even though they're good this year, do they look as dominant as they were last year? And part of that is the growth curve. So let's just use offense, for example. You bring in a new OC, the changes of routes, the changes of terminology, getting information to go from short-term memory to long-term memory to where you can process it without thinking. That takes time with athletes. It takes time in any profession. And that's where I think Philadelphia is going through right now is you have players that are just a step slower than they would have been last year. They read things a little bit differently than they would have last year because they have that same coaching staff for so long. They can just do things without thinking. And so I think, Action, it's going to change things significantly around here and probably affect the season. But that's how it goes. Don't worry about it, man. Yeah, do what you got to do as far as texting. All right, Bergs, that must have been a great experience, but unfortunately, teams' front offices have short memories. Yeah, and it stinks. My coaching career, I've been overall fairly fortunate. I mean, I've never had a losing season, but I can also tell you this. People are going to come after you, and it's just how it is. They're going to talk about your mama. They're going to talk about your Mountain Dew and talk about your spiky hair. They're going to do whatever they got to do to get under your skin. And, if you're going to be a coach, man, you just got to live with it. One more question, Coach, before I go. How many Pro Bowlers will we have? I think right now you're looking at 5 to 7. That's my opinion right now, but I think they're on the team right now, if I had to guess. And, Don, you have a great day, man. Jay Mommy, I've been wondering if they are working Gibbs into the receiver role until they see how J-Mo is doing. I do think over time, whether that time be this year or next year, I think you're going to see him. I was talking about it earlier in the show. Debo Samuel. I think you're going to see Gibbs become more of that kind of role. We've done it with St. Brown a couple years ago. He hasn't done it so much, although against Kansas City, we did line St. Brown up as a fullback, believe it or not. We did that on a couple plays. But I do believe Gibbs is going to be a split player. So, half the time at receiver, half the time at running back. All right. Yeah, Don, I got you, man. I got you. All right, Johnny Mac, how bad does losing Rez hurt? Not sure. Maybe I'm not thinking of who that is, but I guess let me know. But I'm drawing a blank on that, so apologies for that. All right, guys, it's been Sean, what do we got here? With J-Mo coming back, do you believe that wide receiver is a pressing need for the Lions? I would say yes. I wouldn't say pressing need. Let me rephrase that. I think our pressing needs are depth on the offensive line and defensive line. Those, to me, supersede the wide receiver room now that J-Mo's back. But I think if we could add one more legit player, it doesn't have to be a Pro Bowl level player there, then I think we're pretty good because Marvin Jones, I think his role with the team is about done. I think other than being a mentor and helping people learn and develop, I think there is real value there. As far as his impact as an athlete on the field nowadays, I think he's done about there. All right, Dale, what you got? Everyone keeps assuming that Ben Johnson will take a head coaching job. What if he is happy in Detroit and doesn't want a head coaching job? That's a legit question. Not everybody wants that crown on their head as far as being a head coach. So if he doesn't, then fine. I'd keep him around, make him the highest paid assistant coach or OC around. It's not like the Fords can't afford it. So I would say this: if he doesn't want to leave, you reward him and give him a reason not to leave. So great point. All right, guys, the Mountain Dew is calling me. Circle K is probably already texting me asking how come I haven't been there yet. So I'm going to wrap up today's show. If there is some breaking news throughout the day, I'll let you guys know. Tomorrow, as you guys are probably also aware, will be the prediction video for the Carolina game. If you guys jump in and have a good day with that. So, Bergs, you have a great day too, man. Thank you all for jumping in. People who haven't yet subscribed and tell other Lions fans. Yeah, I enjoy doing this, and hopefully you guys pick up on that. So you all take care. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next Lions Talk Live.